Welcome to Interruptions podcast, where we have heartfelt and sacred discussions about our culture, faith traditions, and community. We invite guests who are open and willing to share their journey and disrupt the silence on their personal and professional interruptions that have impacted their lives as it relates to emotional wellness. Coach Cathy and I are very passionate about every episode and committed to providing actionable advice that you can apply today to reinvent yourself on your life journey and encourage you to develop a path toward healing. I am your co-host, Rev.O.
And I'm Coach Cathy. Thank you for the handle. I absolutely love it.
I'm glad you love it. Thank you.
How are you?
I am wonderful. Long weekends.
Yeah, it didn't feel like that for me, but okay.
All right, I got it. I got it.
So, what is the title of our podcast?
Oh, how did I leave that out? The title of our podcast today is called The Godfather.
The Godfather. I love it. And so tell me who our guest is.
Our guest today is Jackie's godfather, my friend that I met in college at Pratt Institute. His name is Anthony Bonnet. I call him Tony. So let's bring him into the room. And as we're going to be sharing great conversations about interruptions in our lives.
Hey, ladies, how are you?
Hi, Tony. How are you?
Good. Just so you know, there aren't many people that call me Tony.
Okay, well, you want me to call you Anthony?
I can't. No, it's okay. It's all right. I can't stop Odell at this point because, she means well, but she's,
Listen, I get it. Some people want to be called their full name, so I get it. So if you would like me to call you Anthony, I can figure that out.
That would be weird while she says Tony. So
I can switch. I can do Anthony.
Yes, but the way you say it, it's like I've switched. It's not like I say it.
She sounds like she's on punishment, right? And has to say Anthony.
Yes,
right?
yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't think she
sounds like a parent.
with it. Yep. So Tony, if people read the book, Odell's book, Interruptions, then they know how you met. But I'm going to ask you to share with the audience that may not have read the book yet. How did you two meet?
Well, we met at Pratt, but we met through, I think we met through Charlie, actually. And Charlie is another guy who was good friends with my first cousin. And he went to school with my cousin and transferred into Pratt. And so I met Charlie through my cousin, and Charlie and Odell met somehow, don't know. And then through Charlie, I think I met Odell, because I met you, Odell, I think prior to either one of us dating the people we dated when we lived in the dorm. And I won't go into all of that, but
Thank you. Thank you.
But
man.
we this is that, Cathy, it wasn't in the book. So
I
there's
think
a reason it's not in the book.
Revision. There needs to be a revision. Add some.
Oh yeah, well that you and Odell talk about that, and Odell will lay the ground rules for me before I come back and we talk about it. Which means we probably won't talk about it.
So Tony, just for edification, tell me what Pratt is, so our audience
knows. Pratt Institute is it is primarily now an arts school. Mm-hmm. Arts, I believe they still have a school of architecture. They used to have an engineering school, and they have a fashion design school. They have a Brooklyn campus, but they also have a Manhattan campus. And we met in Brooklyn.
And you met in Brooklyn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And where do you live now, Tony?
I live in New Jersey.
You live in New Jersey. Okay. Yeah. So we know that you were a basketball player.
No, I wasn't.
You were not.
Charlie was the basketball player.
Oh,
Charlie was the basketball player. I knew all the guys on the team because they lived around me in the dorm, but Charlie was the basketball. Charlie is 6'4".
Okay.
And I'm like 5'11" and a half. Charlie was the basketball player, and he and my cousin played basketball at FIT in New York together.
Okay. Okay.
undergrad for the first 2 years before Charlie transferred in. So that, Odell, was probably the thing that I
Okay.
mentioned to you that was like, it has no bearing on what you wrote in the book, because as you know, when I got the book, I I was in the middle of reading something else, and as soon as I was done, I think I finished your book in, I don't know, a week, five
Okay.
days, and we can talk about that. That was the book. Reading the book was like,
We'll save that for later.
okay,
All
okay.
right. Well, then, Odell, do you want to talk about would Tony then know about you coordinating the pep squad for the basketball
Oh.
team?
Yes, I would.
Oh, then I want to hear that story.
So Odell is, and this is part of this whole pep squad thing. Was one of the things I found was that has made me respect her so much, um, because she was friends with the basketball team and I was friends with the basketball team. We'd go to the games, and Odell is sitting in the stands with me and some other folks, and she's sitting there and she's just looking around, and one day she's like, where are the cheerleaders? Where's the pep squad? What kind of, this isn't right. So this doesn't feel right. And then so she started asking some of the other young ladies in the dorm, primarily, I think they all were in the dorm, who wanted, if they were interested in joining the pep squad. And so she got five or six. And the director of athletics said, well, there's no money for a pep squad. So if you want a pep squad, you got to raise the money for it. And she didn't blink. I don't know where she got the candy from, but you remember the candy? She used to go to the track meets, because Pratt hosted big track meets and a lot of other sporting events. So she'd go into the gym when all these people were there to be packed, and she would walk around with boxes of candy. And I remember one night there was a basketball. I don't know if it was a Pratt game or not, but she calls me. Um, I was in the dorm across the street, and she calls me and she says, "Can you come and get me?" And I'm like, "You're across the street. Why do I have to come and get you?" And she's like, "Well, I sold out and I got a lot of money, and these guys are looking at me. So I'd like you to come and get me." You remember that?
I do, Kathy. I had, dollar bills and coins all in my jacket pocket, and I was clueless. I'm thinking I'm safe, just have to walk across the street back to the dorm. And these guys were from Brooklyn, and it was the Colgate games,
Right.
and they were looking at me like, we're going to rob her right as soon as she walk out that door. And I knew enough to say I'm not walking out the door, and went to the front desk. There weren't any cell phones back then or beepers, so you had phones. So I called Tony in his dorm, and he walked across the street, he and
With
somebody else.
Charlie. Charlie.
Yep,
It
you
was
and
with Charlie.
Charlie, and escorted me back to the dorm.
And I didn't know
Aw.
why she needed it until I started looking around, because she didn't, like Odell says, she was clueless. She wasn't completely clueless, or she'd have walked out the door. Right. But there were some guys, because they were looking at us. They're like, who are these guys? And so, we were just like, yeah, well, tonight's not going to be your night. So we
And,
walked back
and
across the street, and she had a pile of money, and she had a pile of money. It was I don't know, you had a few $100s at least.
I did. And Kathy, the director of the basketball team, we didn't know cheers or steps. And he actually hired someone to come teach us how to cheer from the stands. And believe it or not, she was an AKA.
Of course she
I didn't know
was.
that.
She
I had
was
no
an
idea.
she was
Of
an
I mean, I
course
didn't know.
she
AKA.
was.
I didn't know that was that Pablo? Was that
I don't remember.
yeah.
I don't
So
remember.
I didn't know that he hired someone to teach you guys cheers.
He did. Yep.
He
And
probably
Tony,
was impressed with the fact that you raised the money that he didn't think, or nobody thought, would get raised, and you did it on your own, and you just made it happen.
Tony, please tell me you have a picture of that when she was on the pet store?
Oh,
All right, you're gonna
no.
have to really look.
So this is one of those things where the only pictures we have are camera pictures, and nobody had a cell phone.
No,
I'm just trying to think. I can vividly
No.
remember, but I don't have a picture of that. I don't.
that would have been so much fun for
Oh
me
yeah,
to
Fair
see.
black
enough.
pom poms and a V-neck sweater with a P on the front. It said Pratt, and we had black pom poms, and we looked good.
Yeah, I
It
bet
was
you
cute.
did.
It was
I
cute. It was black and gold. It was cute.
So, Odell, I just need you to clarify for me because I think
Yes,
at some point the audience might be a little confused because we're talking about Pratt Institute. And
yes.
really, since we've been doing our podcast, we've only spoken about you being at Howard. So, talk to us a little bit about that transition, why you left Pratt and how you ended up at Howard.
How did I leave Pratt?
Yeah, and ended up at Howard.
My cousin Darswell, who's going to be on the show, he had graduated from Howard University and had gotten he was working in banking, working in the city, and had an apartment on Washington Avenue, which is Washington Street, which is around the corner from Pratt. And he came to the dorm. I had a project I needed his help with, an accounting project. He came to the dorm, and I thought I was it. I knew the basketball team, the track team. I was a nutritionist, so I had friends, and I thought life was good. And he looked at me and said, after 2 visits, he says, "I think you're wasting your life here. You need to go to another school because you have much more potential." And
Oh,
I didn't have a choice. And that spring break, I thought it was it. I was having fun. I was actually having a lot of fun because
Hmm.
he was having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's what it was. I was having too much fun.
That
And
uh-huh.
could be. That could
and
be.
yes, so that's how I ended up leaving Pratt and going to Howard.
Okay. So, Tony, I heard you ate very well while you were at Pratt and Odell was still there.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
were you part of her trial and error phase?
for a while, because once the word got out, there were a lot of people who wanted to be part of the trial and error. And now I'm talking like she was trying chicken cordon bleu. All right, she wasn't trying. She was trying beef Wellington. She wasn't trying, to cook the, you know, the typical
Ramen
stuff.
noodles, right?
Oh no, no. I don't think she had ramen noodles in her kitchen. I don't think so. We
No,
did, but
That's
I
funny.
don't think she did. I don't think
no.
she did.
I
She
was
she used to go away in the summer and go. Where did you go that one summer? To France, to Cordon Bleu for cooking. You spent 2 weeks in Cordon Bleu to learn. Your mom
yes,
there?
yes.
Yeah. So Coach Cathy, that's what she experimented on. Look what I learned, and we're eating this stuff like what? Okay, more, please.
Yeah.
We were we literally were breaking her because that stuff's expensive to buy for as a college
Yeah,
student.
yeah,
And my
that's
mother
true.
was a
That's as
chef.
expensive to buy now.
Well,
You know, my mother was a chef, and she was bringing food to the dorm. And I mean, I would have steaks. We would have steaks and shrimps, scallops, and I'm making all kinds of dishes and wanted people to try how I was cooking because I'm in culinary school. And Tony and a few others on the basketball team, I'd knock on their doors, and they would come downstairs in my dorm and they would eat, and I would serve them. And in addition to that, Cathy, my mother, I was the only one in the dorms. I had $100 bottles of wine in my
Uh,
room, at least 6 or 7. And
what?
oh, yeah.
oh, you have no idea. You
Oh
have no
man.
idea. And of course, none of us had the palate for it. We were like, we liked it, we didn't like it. We didn't know we were drinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's funny. So, Tony, let me ask you this. When you first met Odell, was it easy to recognize that she was from Boston?
um, it wasn't until she opened her mouth and said certain things. Now, let me just preface that with saying at that point, New York and Boston had the rivalry, the NBA rivalry. Those two teams would go to war every time. So, there was that natural New York Boston thing. We hated Boston, right? And Boston hated New York. Um, and so I meet her and I'm like, okay, it's Odell. And then she'd say something and we kind of look at her like, what? Do you remember?
I said, I want to go to a potty.
We
And,
were like, we were like, you want to go to the bathroom?
and I said, no, no, I want to go to a potty. Take me to a potty. And they couldn't figure it out. And I had to go dancing, potty, potty. And they were like, oh, don't talk.
We're gonna go to a party, but you can't talk. So,
That's
and,
funny.
and there's another story kind of related to that. I remember once Charlie and I were going to the city, and Odell was like, "Take me to the city so I could see. I want to go to the village or whatever." And so we meet downstairs. The summertime was really warm, it was nice. She comes downstairs with 9 gold chains on. Now, it wasn't like trunk jewelry. It was like fine, nice. It was like 9. Each one was a little bit bigger than the next. And so you could tell it was nice. And Charlie and I are looking at her like, you are going to make us have to chase people down, because that was back in the chain snatching days. If you can recall, back then people were snatching chains left and right. And so she comes down and Charlie and I immediately just started laughing and told her to go upstairs, take like 6 of those chains off and come back. And if you can't take those chains off, you can't come. And she's looking at us like, why, what's wrong with my chains? What's wrong? I want to go to the city. I want to go. We're like, no.
Because they
It
were
was
like, we don't want to fight. And when you're on the train, don't open your mouth because
Oh,
people are going to know that you're from out of state. You're from Boston, which we don't like. So don't talk and take off the chains. So I had strict instructions on what to do and what not to do.
and I know that we talked a little bit about your desire to be part of the club scene, right?
Yeah.
And so how did Tony help you get involved with the club scene?
Oh, Tony and Charlie were it. I went to the Studio 54. Well, we went to Studio 54. It was my first time going into a club I'm ready to go on at 8 o'clock, right? They're like, no, go back upstairs. We'll come get you at 11 or midnight. And that was unheard of. Clubs in Boston closed at 1 o'clock. You want to go out at 12? And we went to different clubs. We came out, the sun was shining. I danced and partied all until I dropped. The music was boom, boom, boom. It was the bomb.
you would be deaf. You would be deaf. I think we went to the garage once.
We went to the garage
And the
studio.
garage doesn't open until midnight.
Oh,
So you literally would go in there at midnight, midnight. You go there like 1 o'clock, whatever. And you'd come out 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was very disorienting because the sun would be shining. You're blinded by it. Your ears are numb because the speakers were like 6 feet tall. And when you're in there, you can feel your organs shifting around from the bass. And it was fun though. It was fun. It was good.
oh,
You're young, it was
Yeah.
it was what we wanted to do. It was um I wouldn't change it. I probably would go out more knowing what I know now.
But
so Odell,
Kathy,
does this tie into your birthday party? Was that all part of that? Your birthday, your special?
Oh,
Oh, I
mm.
guess not. Okay, then no. Let me hear the birthday party story.
go ahead, Tony.
the
I was gonna say
birthday
everybody's
party.
silent. We can't be silent on a
No,
podcast.
no, no, no. But it going to the garage would have been easy compared to her birthday party, because her birthday party was 2.5 days straight.
Oh,
Straight. It went overnight. During the day, she made breakfast, music still playing. She's in pajamas, never went to bed, and I would go upstairs, crash for a while, come back down. Oh, you missed breakfast. And it was nonstop. I don't know how you pulled that off. You must have fed the people that
Well,
lived around you, because nobody ever complained. I never understood that.
oh, and it was a pajama party. So that's what it was, Kathy. So it was fine. You just come as you are. And my mother dropped off a big pot of shrimp gumbo. And back then it was golden champales and was the drink. And she gave we had cases of wine and shrimp. So we were
And food.
the guy I was dating was on the 14th floor. I was on the second floor. You all, I forgot which floor you were. I was
We
on
were
the
on
10th
15.
floor.
Yeah.
And when I tell you people was coming up and down the elevators, on the stairs, partying, the floors, we partied all weekend long. And I was a freshman.
uh, you are a freshman.
I was a
Hmm.
freshman.
Oh my goodness,
Which
that is
means
funny.
which means she had just turned 18, because she came at
Ah,
17.
okay. All right. Now
So
the stories are coming out. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate this.
Mhm.
I'm writing
Let
it
me
all
tell you.
down.
This one here, I don't know if we have enough time, but
but
anyway,
No,
Kathy,
we
what's
don't,
my
Tony.
next question?
I'm gonna have to
no,
call you
no.
after the show.
But Kathy, you know what it's like being a freshman. You're from Bridgeport. You go to UConn. So you know what college parties are like.
Oh, Dell. Really? No. I
Mm,
was such a good girl. And no. I do remember my first all night party, though. I do. I was so sleepy. It took me a week to recover. I do. So I do. That's funny though. I love that birthday party story. So let me ask you this. So Del, you made a decision, and you made a decision to leave Pratt Institute, and you
Mhm.
transitioned to Howard. How did that impact your relationship with Tony, or did it?
I would, oh, before I went to Howard, I was supposed to drive to Howard. I think I put this story in there, and I have a car accident. I decided to party one more time
mm,
in Brooklyn with my friends. And I go to Brooklyn and we're partying, and I leave to go pick up someone. I'm hit by a drunken driver. I'm in the hospital for at least 6 weeks. And I would never forget this, Tony, that when I was in the hospital, I had fractured lungs and I was jacked up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything. Tony leans over to give me a hug of comfort and sympathy, and he has a Walkman on his chest. And when he leans over to give me a hug in the bed, it hits me on my chest. And I'm like, ugh, I start choking. It's like, oops. So even though I was at Howard, I came back and forth. So, and I was dating the guy that was still at Pratt. So I would stay on campus and I would see Tony, or I was in the city. And Tony and Charlie would come visit me at my mother's place in Manhattan all the time. My mother loved them and fed them all the time.
her mom was, well, I think I made a good first impression. And I also think that some of the guys that Odell was hanging out with did not make a good impression with Miss Mary at all. And so, knowing all of the things that I knew about her and where her mother would send her for cooking school, um, I remember once Charlie and I were invited to come over the day after Thanksgiving. And Charlie gets there first because he was in Manhattan. And I take the train down and I walk up to the apartment building and I see one of those um, bodegas that sell the flowers. And I was like, oh, let me just grab some flowers. And so I walk into the apartment and meet her mother. Hey, Miss Mary, how you doing? Nice to meet you. And your mom says, oh, Dell, he brought flowers for you. And I look at her and I say, no, those aren't for Odell. Those are for you. And I say, thank you for welcoming me and Charlie into your home, and we really appreciate it. And so I give her the flowers, and then about 5 minutes later, she puts them in the vase, and she calls Odell into her bedroom, and the door closes, and Charlie and I look at each other, we're like, all right. And they're like, oh, go help yourself with whatever. And Odell comes out, kind of big smile on her face, and I'm like, what's up? And you told me that your mother loved both of us because we were not the kind of guys that you had introduced to her from
In other words,
yeah, she was like, those are the kind of guys I want you to hang out with. And so, I was just trying to make a good impression on her mother because, that's what you do, so.
And my mother would, when she knew they were coming, Cathy, she would buy big strawberries. And she would see the noise he's making. She would make chocolate from scratch. And she would dip the strawberries in the chocolate, put them in the refrigerator. They could be nice for them. And when they showed up, because this is when I was recovering from the car accident. I'm lying in the bed, can't hardly breathe, and they're drinking champagne and chocolate covered strawberries, and she's fixing them food. So we stayed in contact. We are still friends today, as you can see.
And so, as you could imagine, any time was a great time to go visit her mom because you were going to get fed well.
Poor Tony, chocolate, and strawberries, and champagne. You poor thing.
Life what a was rough hard.
So, Odell,
yes.
So tell me, okay, so you're at Howard. You all are staying in contact. And then transitions of life, journey of life happens. You get married and you have children. So how does that impact your relationship with Tony, or does it?
Well, Tony came to the wedding. So yes, he came to the wedding and got married here in New Haven. But before that, I asked Tony to be the godfather of my firstborn child when I got married and when I had a kid.
So this was before you even got engaged or before you had children, you asked him?
I was a freshman in college and I asked him to be my firstborn godfather.
So Tony, you can imagine.
I was going to say, what on earth?
That's like one of those things like, yeah, I love you too, whatever. It's like, because it's so far away from anybody's reality that, I was like, okay, I love you too. All right.
Sure.
Now let's go hang out some more.
And just kept going. And when I got married,
I never thought about it again.
When I got married, we moved to Connecticut. We lost contact. And I
remember. Oh, let me just say, remember when we ran into each other?
Yes, at CVS.
Yes.
I was in CVS and I heard this voice and I said, that sounds like Tony. And went to the next aisle and there he was. He was dating, let's just say he was dating someone that I know now. And we reconnected. So now I have to have this conversation with my husband to say, Tony needs to be in our lives because he's promised to be the godfather. He's my friend. And the conversation was, we don't have ex-boyfriends in our relationship. And I was like, he's not an ex-boyfriend. And for some reason, people don't believe that men and women, well, can be friends without being intimate or having that relationship. But he was really my friend. And I had to go through this argument that no, Tony gets in, he gets a pass. So he finally agreed to give Tony a pass, Tony and Charlie a pass.
Kinda.
And kind of correct. And said that they can be in our lives. And when I got pregnant, and I called you and I said, you promised to be Godfather.
What could I say? I was, I still was kind of floored because, you know, I completely remember being asked, and, you know, Coach Cathy in one ear and out the other. You kind of remember this stuff because it's so, it's such a substantial ask, but, you don't think about, even after at the wedding, I was like not thinking about that. Never crossed my mind until she brought it back up, and I was like, oh yeah, I did. So I am.
So how did that feel for you? Did you understand the role of a godfather, or did you
No,
take it? Okay, okay.
no,
Yeah.
I didn't, because in my life, my when my parents split up, and when I was a kid, I was really young. They divorced, and so um I didn't really have that relationship with anybody. Everybody was a friend, or a friend of my father, or a friend of my mother, or in their family. But the godfather godmother thing, I heard I had one, but I had
Mhm.
no template to follow.
Yeah. Odell, did you know that when you asked him
No,
again? No.
no,
Okay.
I
She didn't care.
just, I don't know. I have no idea why I asked, but I did. And he accepted. And Tony was and still is has been an awesome godfather. He showed up. He made sure I call him the educational godfather.
I've heard you say that. So what does that mean? What does that mean? And really,
He's
what role? Okay, so what does that mean for? I'm asking multiple questions. So what does that mean?
okay.
And then what role has he played in the family?
So two things. While Jackie's growing up, he came to her christening, and he was present. He stood in. He had to deal with all the family stuff that was going on,
Hmm.
checking in, and books. He every month new books came to the house. Jackie had books, and she still has those books today. Wanted to make sure that she read and she had choices and options. So Jackie knew who her godfather was. And like he said, the ex husband didn't quite take kindly to some guy showing up and spending time with his daughter, but he did. And as time grew on, Tony was always there. I can always depend on him. So he was living in Connecticut at the time, and we're both here in the same state, and we're talking, we're interacting. He helped me to transition into IT. I started a computer lab. I got involved in project management because of Tony. So he helped me along the way. And when there were problems, as I mentioned, in my marriage that I was trying to hide, I was also trying to hide them from Tony and all my friends. And he see him shaking his head. But
She's not good. She wasn't good at it. And I remember once Charlie and I were visiting um, Charlie's wife's family, who also lived in New Haven. She had an aunt in New Haven,
Okay.
um, and we were talking, the three of us, and that's when you told me, you were having some issues that I'm not going to go into detail with, but um, Charlie and I offered to help resolve those issues, and she turned us down,
but I
which is
can
okay.
honestly,
Which was okay because
Mm-hmm.
we weren't going to go talk to her husband.
Yeah.
but I
Without
can
her.
honestly,
Yeah.
but I can
Yeah.
honestly tell you it was that visit that helped me to be strong,
Mm-hmm.
because they're talking about ski, was going skiing in Denver and the Black Ski Club and all these activities they were doing. And I felt that God, I'm missing out on life. Black
Mm.
folks are skiing, really skiing, so I was missing out, and they kept me grounded and focused, and it helped me to stay strong, to knowing that I had a lot of support. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, and so he was there. But Tony, and I have to tell you that and Jackie's going to be our next guest after you. So after I get a divorce and I'm a single parent, Jackie's a mid teenager. So she's being a teenager.
Mm.
And whenever she didn't listen, I would call Tony. And
The Godfather.
I'd call the Godfather. And the Godfather showed up he said, "Don't tell her I'm coming." He said, "I'll be there tomorrow." And he showed up. You want to tell them what you did with her?
Yeah, I think at that point I was living back in New York. So um, we took her to James and I. James was her one of Odell's business partner for a while, and he was a friend of mine. We used to work together, and I think he's still in New Haven. So we took her out and gave her a talking to. We were just, we're like, look, we're not gonna lecture you, but we took her out to this. It was a Japanese restaurant.
No, it was Malaysian.
Okay, it was Malaysian, which back then Jackie was a hamburger, hot dog, chicken nugget kid, as I recall, which
Mm-hmm.
surprised me because I know how you can cook. So I was like, how did that happen? But now that I have kids, I'm like, yeah, I know how that happened. Completely know. So we sat her down and basically asked her, like, what are you doing? Like, really, what are you doing?
Mm.
Oh, I'm just, I just want, what are you doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's like walk through this a little bit because you are really upsetting your mother. You don't understand. Neither she nor Jonathan. And I've had a few chats with Jonathan, but Jonathan was quicker on the uptake. I'll put it that way. So he didn't need the lecture. She was not so quick all the time, and so I had to explain to them without telling them everything I knew how cool their mother was. I'm like, you don't realize some parents are like, they can be a problem. You guys are in good shape. You guys have a great mom. You need to chill. You need to listen to her. You need to have me not come up here to have these talks instead of us going out and just hanging out because, and by the way, Kathy, she hated the restaurant. She hated it. She hated it because all the food was weird. And, so she didn't like the food. She didn't like the talking to. Um, and, I think part of it was also as the oldest, I think she may have felt that the fact that her parents weren't together was a little bit of her fault. And it
Mm.
totally was not. It was not. And,
Mm-hmm.
You can say that to a kid, and having been there and watching what happened, I knew it
Mm-hmm.
was not her fault, and there was nothing she could have done to change what happened. But there was a little bit of guilt there, I think.
Yeah.
But Kathy, I can tell you that after James and Tony took Jackie out, I would say to her, "Do I need to call your godfather?" "No." "Okay. All right. All right." And let me tell you, it worked. And that was a threat that she's like, "I never, ever want to have to eat that food again or hear that lecture from Mr. James and Uncle Tony again." So it
Yeah.
worked, and it helped because she says, "No, I'm good. Just beat me,
Yeah.
Mom. Just beat me. I don't
Put me on punishment, right? That's
just
funny.
beat me."
That's funny.
So yes. So, Tony, what I don't remember is how you moving forward. I don't remember how you heard about John's the interruption with John and
Mm.
my brain aneurysm.
Um, I think you called me about John,
Okay.
and I, I I was, I was in, at that point I had, I have twin boys, and at that point they were 7 years old, I think. Um, and I was trying to find a way to get up there, but I just at that point I think I was doing the Mr. Mom thing at home, and it was hard to get out. It was anything I did in for myself, I had to do it like between 5 and 7 in the morning because um, I never had enough time to drive up there and then come back in time to be with them. Um, my wife, at that point was executive at Macy's, and she was, a high-ranking executive, and so she had to put in the time. It was clearly there were no options there, and I wasn't going to get in her way, definitely not, because um, opportunities like she had don't happen often. So it was easier for me to be Mr. Mom, as a consequence of that, get I couldn't do what I was doing before. I couldn't support the way I was supporting before. Um, that's what she needed wasn't a phone call, it, um, and I couldn't be there.
But you did. You ended up showing up. You were here. You was here for me. I don't remember much, but I don't remember I don't remember that year much after that night.
So yeah,
But how did
so
you find out about my brain aneurysm? I didn't
James
call
called
you.
me. I think James called me.
Okay.
He called me. You went into the hospital like midweek, I think like a Wednesday or something like that. I don't
I don't
remember.
remember.
And so I couldn't get up there because I knew I couldn't go to the hospital like 9 o'clock at night, right? I couldn't and visit at that point. So I had to wait until Saturday. So Saturday late morning, I got in the car, came up, found you in the room. Nobody's there, and you were out, like just still sedated, and that was hard to see. It was really hard to see, and so I sat there for about 2 hours, and then you woke up, and then when you woke up, you couldn't speak for about 25, 30 minutes. So I'm talking to you, and I'm like, I know she's conscious, but she's not answering, and then at one point, your speech came back. You started talking, and you explained to me, like, sometimes it takes a while for me sometimes to get my speech back. I'm gonna have to do a lot of rehab to get back on my feet. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a hard visit.
Mm-hmm. Tony, so you saw and you were um, with Odell going through the trauma of the loss of her son and then suffering the brain aneurysm. What did you think when you found out that she wrote a play and a book? What did you think about that?
She told me she was gonna write a play, and I was thinking myself, you know, sure, why, okay. Yeah, but at the same time, she was saying, but I can't write, and I'm having a problem. Some of her executive functions were still being developed, so or coming back, and so she was, she's like, I'm going to get some help. I'm going to get it done. And so I was like, well, okay, you know, anything to keep you busy, because at that point, I remember you weren't working, and knowing Odell the way I do, um, it doesn't matter how um, sick she is, if she can physically do something, if she can physically be more active than she needs to be. I'm giving you the
Yeah,
stink
she
eye,
knows.
Odell.
Yeah, Kathy
Stink
knows.
eye. So um, she's going to try and do it. And so I
Yeah.
recall Jackie saying to me that she has to take your phone and your iPad away, to stop answering people who are asking how you're doing, blah blah blah. Um, that was one of my concerns, though, was how you're going to do it, um, given that looking at electronics for long periods of time was kind of difficult for you. So,
Hmm.
I mean, it took a while, but you did it, and I think part of it was um, part of your own self therapy, because it wasn't enough to talk to people about how you felt. You wanted people to understand what it felt like, and for them to understand that this was this is not uncommon, unfortunately. um, and that was after your crusade to close the pizza shop, right?
Hmm.
Yes.
So that was, you know I was see that's the Odell I know, because um, she can organize people. She can um, put together a plan. And once she's decided she's going to do it, it's a matter of when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. That's the Odell I know.
Hmm.
That's one of the things that I found, even, when we were much younger, real impressive about her. Even during times when things weren't going well, there was always, like a thought to, um, later when things are better. Um, I'm going to be able to do this, and this is how I hope to get there. So, and it's very, it actually, in some ways, it was good for me, because I looked at her when I was having challenges, and I'm like, well, I don't have I haven't gone through anything like
Hmm.
um, what she went through.
People like you and Kathy who are in my life, and when you weren't here, I can go to Kathy's house and I would just call her, see if she's home, show up, call her crying, and she would just say, "Come over." And I would walk in her house, tears rolling down my eyes. And what did you tell me, Kathy, all the time?
Yeah, because listening to other people, she would always think that she should be better by now, and it would, like,
Mm.
who told you that? Who makes that decision? No one can make that decision. No one's walking in your footsteps. So I never understood that. And it would break my heart just there was so much pressure that she was putting on herself based on what other people were saying. And like, Tony, that's just not her. It certainly is not her now. She's writing and teaching classes. And then what did you think about when you found out that you were in the book? How did that
Um,
feel?
I was well, it felt good. Initially, I was like, what part of what we did is in the book? Because there's some stuff. I mean, we never dated, but there's some stuff. I'll just leave it at that. I mean,
I love it.
we
I
we
told you there got
we
to be a revision. That's
we
it.
we had well, during Pratt, we had a good too good a time, which is why oftentimes, she used to say to me, like 6 weeks before the end of the semester, I would disappear. She's like, she would not see me except walking in and out. She's like, where have you been? I thought you left campus. I was like, I can't live like that and pass my college classes. So I had to disappear and go to the library, go hide in rooms. I was like, I don't want people to find me. I need to get my stuff together so I don't flunk.
Yeah, good for
No,
you.
I didn't flunk Kathy, but I didn't have that discipline that he had until I went to Howard. And I think
Okay.
that's why my cousin said, you gotta go because you're spending way too much time, talking about going to the club.
Odell,
Yeah.
why was it important for you to have Tony as part of this, your book, your story that you wanted to tell? Why was that important?
Because he's a big part of our lives, not just my life, our lives. Who asks? It's rare that a 17-year-old asks someone to be their godfather, and then he honors that and shows up and is in Jackie's life and is in
Mm-hmm.
our life, and really had to fight through what I was going through and say nothing but see it and still show up and be a friend and be supportive. So when you get a friend like that, it's important for people to know that I didn't get here by myself, that
Mm-hmm.
I had support and not. Oh, and Tony, for the record, can you please verify for our audience that you are not my Mr. Y guy?
Mr. Y?
In the book, I have a Y guy,
Oh,
and
no.
thank
Yeah.
you.
No.
you
No.
know, so yes. And Miss Hill, Cathy, Coach Cathy from our church, when she read the book, she said, and if he's such a nice guy, and your mother loved him, and he's Jackie's godfather, and he does all these great and wonderful things, why didn't you two ever date? So I said, Miss Hill,
Circumstances.
circumstances. We was always dating other people.
Yeah.
And then we became each other's ear
Mm,
when we dated those other
yeah.
people to help us to get through it. But no, I said, Miss Hill, we just were good friends. So
Yeah.
she's like, okay.
Yeah.
That's
People. Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. It is. A lot of people don't believe it, and you know, I don't care. I don't. I don't care.
Yeah.
I
But
don't care.
but Tony, I have a question for you. Thank you for clearing that up so Miss Hill can say, I just wanted to know. So, and she will watch this show. Tony, what we talk about, what Cathy and I get into now, the last couple of minutes of this, is we talk about the problems that I went through of not having the myths and stigmas in our culture and our family, not to talk about grief or it's okay to cry. Now you have twin boys, you're married. Do you talk to your sons about death and grief and crying and how to get through things? Or what do you say to two young black teenage boys about life?
I tell you now, I don't talk to them about grief so much now. I talk to them more about safety now. Um, and I mean, they came to the funeral when my mother died. They were pretty young, so I don't think they really, you know, it didn't hit them. I know they knew something major happened, but I don't think it really hit them. And partially because I didn't let them. Um, as they're growing up now, because we live in a town unlike New Haven. Um, our town is ooh, 75% white. Um, and so the issues they have are more related to being the only one in their class, being the kid that, when they're reading um, certain novels and they come up on some term. I mean, this year it's been To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, there's language in there that is hard when you are the only child of color in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
when that and so they had to deal with um, you know everyone looking at them during certain passages in the book, like, or when a teacher would ask a question, they would be like, well, what do you guys, what do you think? And it was so funny because my sons would say, Dad, I grew up here, so how would I know what that's like? And I said, that's a good point. But that was the beginning of our discussion about who they are, what that means. I would say over the last 5 or 6 years, given all the publicity surrounding um, police brutality, racial unrest, um, I think some people have started to understand a little, but like most of the country, I think there are people that just don't get it, um, and it's a hard lesson for them. And I mean, not my boys. My boys have to, they're living in the skin they're in. But it's a hard lesson for some white people to understand what it means to be a black child,
Mm-hmm.
um, and more critically, and this is the discussion I have with them a lot, is what it means to be a black boy, because they don't look at you like a boy. Now that they're 15, I have 15-year-olds. They're um, every time something happens, I say, you need to make sure that you understand your surroundings and what's going on, because
Yeah.
they will look at you first, and
Now,
they've come to me with that. So, um, but in terms of, like, I know I've gone off on a tangent a little bit, but about grief, um, I explained to them what happened to John. And when we came to visit, because remember, we came to visit you the day of the COVID shutdown. You may not remember that. We were coming back from skiing.
oh,
I took
yes.
my boys skiing. We went to New Hampshire. We were skiing for the weekend, and they shut the ski resort down Friday night. We were up there, no, Saturday night. We were up there from Friday night. We were going to ski through Sunday afternoon. So Saturday morning, we decided to come back, and so I said to myself, "There's no way I'm driving back from New Hampshire, even though New Haven is a detour. It's like, it's not that much of a detour." And you hadn't seen the boys in. I mean, I know you get the card every year, but I think that was
Yes.
the first time.
I
And of
saw
course,
them, and yeah, it's my first time seeing them in person, and it's weird because he has twins. One looks like him, and the other one looks just like his wife Bernice. So
and
it's
they're very different.
That's
totally
perfect,
Every
though.
totally different
single
kids.
way. They
That's
aren't the same
perfect.
color. They aren't the same height. They don't have the same frame. I have an extrovert and an introvert. It's like everything is
Aw, I love
awe,
it.
awe.
I
They're
do. I
15.
love that. I love
Right?
it. I love it.
You wanna
Tony,
you wanna have them for the weekend? Because
listen, I
I'm
get
good
it.
with
I
that.
get it. Tony, I don't know if you know that right now what Odell is doing is talking to groups about having conversation on her book, how to really hold a book talk. Because it's rare
Mm,
that you're able to get the author and really get an insight of what they were thinking, what they were going through in particular points in their journey. So my question to you is, you know that you are part of her journey. If Odell is having this conversation with groups, what would you say for your character, for your person? What do you want the group to understand or walk away with, either about yourself or about your relationship with Odell?
a few things, actually, a few things. One, one of which Odell brought up, that men and women can be friends. Um, Odell is my ride or die, so men and women can be each other's ride or die, and that is um, not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, the other thing is um, what it means to be a friend, like what it really means. Like, there's the good parts of being a friend. You're hanging out, you chit chat and whatever. But then there's the difficult parts where you have to be real with them, and they need to be real with you, and you have to know where all of that is coming from. And so with Odell, no matter what our conversations, we've had discussions about everything substantial in each other's lives, I would say, like everything. And when you hear stuff that you don't want to um, accept, even when we don't agree with her, I know where it's coming from. So as a friend, you need to not pull punches. So
Mhm.
so I think people need to realize that um, um, your relationships with people are the only thing really that's real.
Mhm.
Everything else is stuff. There's family, and which is not stuff, but everything else that people focus on, it's stuff. And everybody likes nice stuff. I like nice stuff. So I'm not saying I'm different from other people. I'm not. But one of the things that our relationship has shown me is that there's people, and then there's stuff.
Mhm.
And the people will get you through anything, and they will outlast any stuff that you have. You know, so you know, I think one of the things I think I'm fortunate from, and I've said this to you lots of times, Odell, that you're one of the best people I know. Right? I told you that I don't know how many times, and it's because of your resiliency. It's because your honesty. It's because your openness, and and um, and the trust that you've shown me. I mean, there aren't many people. I mean, it's like one hand of people that aren't family that I can turn to, and I can pick up the phone and call her, and like anything. So, um, did I answer your question?
You answered it beautifully, Tony. Thank you so much. And it is an honor to meet you. I'm glad that you are in Odell's life. And that was a perfect segue into me. I want, again, to remind our audience to please subscribe to our channel. But I want Odell to talk a little bit to kind of close us out about her book talks and how they can get in contact with her to have these conversations. But Tony, thank you so much for being part of this show. And I'm going to call you so I can get those little pieces that we couldn't talk about on the show, so we can talk about that after.
We may have
Um,
to. I may have to come up there. We have to sit down, and it's. She may not like it, but that's okay.
listen, see me first, and then I'll call her like after 2 hours that you've been here, and then say, oh, and by the way, Tony's here.
The
So,
Oh,
God,
Odell, if
the
you would take us out
Godfather.
talking about your
I
book
will.
discussions.
Thank you, Tony. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. So, what Kathy and I are doing now is that we have a book called Let's Talk, which is about emotional wellness and looking at mental health behaviors that occur in our everyday lives and how we dismiss those behaviors and not feeling comfortable about helping people through them and recognize what's really going on, but just turning a blind eye. So we're having those discussions. Our website is under development, revodellresilience.com. And the workbook is a 8-week session. And we talk about 8 different topics of mental health. Kathy, we have customers and clients. The program launches in March. Yes, and it's about actually talking to everyday people, peer-to-peer program about emotional wellness and how to recognize those behaviors in our everyday life. So you can reach us through our website. You can contact me through email, interruption62@gmail.com. And the program is launching. We have a couple of clients now, Kathy, I have to tell you about in Hartford. And we're also working with churches. And our church, Kathy, is hosting the book talk.
Awesome.
So we're having the book talk at our church to have that conversation the month of March, and in the community, churches, and it's really designed to help leaders who interact with adults and youth to help them to understand and have that conversation, and especially because we're in this faith realm for pastors. This book is to help pastors not always feel they're the only ones that have to help their disciples. So we want to train their leadership to be able to execute these programs so the pastor is not overwhelmed and stuck. So this is what we're doing. This is the mark that we're making. And we have programs that start in March. We have customers who have paid their enrollment fee. And we have more training coming in April. And we're training leaders and our goal is to change one family at a time.
All right. Well, thank you again, Tony, and thank you to our audience. And please don't forget to subscribe and like our station.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Thank you.